Good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are, and welcome to a bit of a different podcast. I am Cousin Cheeto of NerdTube, and we're just gonna get into it. This is, as you can tell from the imagery, a Spider Man podcast, a little bit of history. I grew up with Spider Man, he was my biggest hero growing up. Um, I wouldn't say that they've done the character very well in the past couple years, but then again, I just might be very biased. I just want to check my levels really quick and just make sure that you can hear me well and everything like that. Just give me 1 second. I apologize. This is something new I'm trying, so. Maybe it's going to let me. I don't know. Okay, let's not do that. Let's do this way. It's going to let me. I don't know. I think it is getting me. I don't know. Hello? I think it is getting me. I don't know. Hello? Okay, well, I think I've had a little bit of a technical difficulty, like a repeat or whatever, so. But I but I think I fixed it. Okay, so anyway, so with Spider-Man, growing up in the '90s, everybody loved Spider-Man. Everybody loved this Spider-Man animated series in the '90s. That's kind of where I got introduced to him at. I knew of him beforehand. I had been watching X-Men the animated series and stuff like that. Um, I can't listen. Hold on. I can't have myself in my ear. I keep on getting all mixed up. But yeah, I mean I grew up watching the animated Spider-Man show. Um, but really I kind of got into The Adventures of Spider-Man, which was a comic book based off the cartoon. And actually, it was The Adventures of X-Men that I first got into in the '90s X-Men cartoon. Then I crossed over to Spider-Man, fell in love with Spider-Man there. Then went into the comic books, and then once The Adventures of X-Men, the comic books kind of went away. Um, it, you know, I started collecting the actual Spider-Man comic books. And that's actually one of the series that I'm going to have here later on that I'm going to show you. Um, so yeah, so moving through time, I mean, through the years, I started collecting the mainline Spider-Man. Once that ended in the early 2000s, then I started collecting the Amazing Spider-Man. I also started collecting Spider-Girl, which was a Elseworlds daughter of Spider-Man, and it's a great comic line. It went back to the old school, like 60s and 70s, where there's like kind of like a villain a week, and a little bit more wholesome. You didn't have to deal with some of the adult themes, and I think they did a really good job. Um, so yeah, so after that, I mean, through the years, other stuff has come up. I've been collecting the Amazing Spider-Man since it restarted in the early 2000s, back at one, then I went back to the old count, and then back to one, and then back to the legacy count, and don't even get me started on it. Um, but yeah, so just a lot of my history with Spider-Man has either been through animated form or comic books. So so a lot that's where a lot of my love for Spider-Man has come from. Um, Now, I will be the first to admit that my favorite animated series is not the animated series Spider-Man. I know. Dislike and unsubscribe and hate me forever, whatever. But I, the '90s animated show was okay, better in the beginning, then just turned into a nightmare towards the end, in my opinion. It's hard to sit and watch. in the movies. Believe it or not, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the movies. Now, I'm not going to say I hate any of them. Amazing Spider-Man or Spider-Man 2 is one of my more favorited favorited Spider-Man movies. Spider-Man 1 was okay. Spider-Man 3 was okay. I liked elements of it. The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 were utter garbage. I did, however, like Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield's Peter and Gwen. Those were great. I really actually liked those. I hated everything else about those movies. Just the rest of those movies were utter garbage. I couldn't even help it. It was as a Spider-Man fan growing up, it's sad to watch. And even Tom Holland, not a bad Spider-Man, but still doesn't hit that comic book mark of Spider-Man for me. I've only known Peter Parker as an adult in the comics. He was an adult by the time I started collecting, and I've gone back and read when he was younger, but honest and truly, I don't think Tobey Maguire, definitely not, Andrew Garfield, or honestly Tom Holland have ever struck that Peter Parker tone that really resonates with me. I don't know. I just can't really. I don't want to say fathom. I can't just. It's not. I can't. They don't mesh with me as a Peter Parker. They're all too cool, like they're all kind of cool and just not dorky enough. Not. I don't even want to say clumsy enough. But just awkward. I really don't. I mean, the one that was the closest to the awkwardness that I was looking for was like Andrew Garfield's awkwardness. And I get it that people hated him because he was a skater boy, Peter Parker. But honestly, I preferred that over, well, a lot of his other crap. That's for sure. But with the movies, I mean, so Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home, not my super favorite movies. They're okay. Too much Tony Stark. I hate how Mysterio and Vulture are like leftover Tony Stark villains. They just really just don't mesh at all. I don't feel like they don't feel like Spider-Man villains. They feel like Iron Man villains. And that's fine. If they want those guys to be villains in Iron Man movies, okay, fine, whatever. That tracks. But really, it's just like, hey, Peter, here's my leftover villains. You can have one of them. Oh, now you can have another one. By the way, this guy's mad that I named it Barf, and this one's mad that I took his job. It's like, really? Also, Spider-Man having so much tech in his suit just doesn't feel Spider-Man to me. I mean, while he's with the Avengers, him having all that tech in his suit is okay. But, like, in Homecoming, he had way too much tech in his suit. Homecoming and Far From Home, there was just way too much Spidey tech in there. And I get it, Spider-Man's smart, but like Iron Man just pimped his ride pretty much and made it work. And I don't know, I didn't like it. So I mean, really, two of my favorite Spider-Mans are Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, with Alfred Molina's Doc Ock being spectacular, no pun intended, or maybe a pun intended, and William Dafoe's Goblin was really good. I thought the outfit looked dumb, but the William Dafoe is a double personality supervillain actually works for me. Harry Osborne. What was his name? God, why can't I remember his name? I don't remember. The guy who played Harry Osborne, and I know his name. It's escaping me at the moment. But great Harry Osborne, liked him too. A lot of those people in that original trilogy were really, really good. It just Defoe as Goblin, and now we got our first comment. Ginger Greek, thank you very much for joining. Defoe as Goblin was superb, minus the outfit. I agree 100%. That's just what I said. Defoe as Defoe as the Goblin was great. I really liked him. I thought he played the double personality well, and even at the end, like you believe the confusion. James Franco, really, you didn't like him as Harry? Oh, I liked him. Oh well, but yeah. So Spider-Man 2 is definitely my favorite out of all the Spider-Man movies. Um, I don't know. I mean, there was just so many good things going for it besides Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. I mean the storylines between even with Harry and Peter a little bit. Tobey Maguire is a terrible, terrible Peter Parker. He's too old. He's too just not Peter Parker in my opinion. He just never meshed well with the Peter Parker persona for me. So okay, so that's really any of the movies, unless Ginger Greek has a question or anything like that about that. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely, and as I said, except for the Amazing Spider-Man movies and possibly Spider-Man 3, I wouldn't say any of them were terrible. Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 were terrible. Like the movies were just garbage. Homecoming was okay. Far From Home was a little bit okay. A little bit, maybe I can't even tell if it's a little bit more or less. The only thing I liked in Spider-Man 2 was the chemistry between Peter and Doc Ock. Other than that, I hated that film. Too many cheesy moments. But here's the thing: Spider-Man that's why this is called Quips and Thwips, because Spider-Man is cheesy. Like he is, even as a teenager, he was the king of the dad jokes, and he wasn't even a dad. So, I don't know. It kind of works. The fights with Doc Ock I thought were stellar. And yeah, I thought the chemistry between Peter and Ock was good, but I feel like Alfred Molina carried those scenes regardless. I feel like Tobey Maguire was just there, and Alfred Molina was just like, act off me, boy, because I am acting God. Yeah, the some of the crime. I mean, yeah, Spider-Man cried way too much. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I know Spider-Man's life is tragic, but even in the comics, he doesn't. For how many times Aunt May's died, he hasn't. He still doesn't cry that much. Or was he killed off? We don't know yet. There's a multiverse out there, Ginger. You don't know. Okay, so moving on from the movies, I want to talk about one of my favorite villains of all time. That's going to be Craven the Hunter. Now, a lot of us have heard all the news. Aaron Taylor Johnson is now going to be playing Craven the Hunter in the Sonyverse, which I think is a poor choice, but what do I know? I don't make the big bucks. And I'm not even saying Aaron Taylor Johnson's a bad actor. I just don't feel he would do Craven the Hunter justice. And now, granted, I haven't seen Aaron Taylor Johnson in a ton of stuff. Yeah, I agree, Ginger. I think it is, as I said, I mean, I don't want to say it's terrible casting, but I also don't want to say that it's, like, I don't want to say it's terrible, but at the same time, it's not what I wanted whatsoever. Craven was always older, and I get it. Aaron Taylor Johnson's probably in his 30s, and Tom Holland is in his 20s. I get it. So there is a difference there, but I always felt like there was more like a 20-year age difference between Craven and Spider-Man, even back in like the early days. So, but Craven is a fan cast, or not a fan cast, but a fan villain that I've always wanted in one of these Spider-Man movies. I would have always teamed up Craven and the Lizard. If I were to make my own fan Spider-Man movie with Craven in it, I would have Craven and the Lizard. I wouldn't make Craven the first villain in like a trilogy or something like that. Honestly, I would probably make it the third movie in a Spider-Man trilogy if I made it. But it would be kind of like Vermin. Vermin would kind of quasi take, like a Lizard would quasi take over Vermin's place. He's a CW level actor. I hated his Quicksilver. Frank Grillo would have been Frank Grillo would have been would have been a good one. And I agree. I feel like Frank Grillo was underutilized as Crossbone. I didn't mind him as Crossbone, but I feel like but no, that's a good casting right there. Also, Joe Manganiello. I would have done Joe Manganiello. I know that he was, and I'm not just saying that because he was Flash Thompson in the original Spidey films. I'm just saying because I can see it. I like Joe Manganiello. And I'm probably saying his last name wrong because I just want Jello. But, so, yeah. Also, Ginger, if you want, I don't know if I can get you in this podcast or not. If you want it in, you can come in. I just didn't see anybody when I started, and as of right now, I can't see if anyone's in the behind the scenes. But anyway, but I'd love to talk with you about this stuff eventually. If I do another one of these, I mean, I don't know how often I'm doing these. I don't know if I don't know how often. I mean, I might do these once a month, every other week, never again. You never know. So, yeah. All right. So, but with Craven, I would have in my like fan cast, not casting, but fan villain, my fan, not casting, fan writing, I guess you can call it. I have a hard time with words. I can't do words very well. I would have definitely put Craven with Lizard. I would have ended it on the Death of Craven note where, you have I mean, I'm not trying to spoil it for anybody, but, at the end of the comic where he is dead. I won't tell you how because it kind of gives stuff away, I guess, for a, 30, 40-year-old comic book now, I guess. But yeah, so I mean, with Craven, he's actually one of my favorite villains. I never liked the like super popular, and it's not that I never but like your Green Goblins, your Venoms, let's see, there's my share. Green Goblins and Venoms and stuff they're okay, like they're good villains, but I more like the B tier maybe, and I feel like the B tiers get put in the B tier because they just don't have that sex appeal that the villains have, like Green Goblin and Venom and Carnage and all those. Craven's kind of like that B-lister that I honestly should feel be an A-lister and should always be up there with any of the Spider-Man villains. We'll just do it on StreamYard. The last thing that I really want to talk about is when I do these, I kind of wanted to do I wanted to bring like a comic book series, some of my favorites. So I chose one for this podcast, and the one that I did was Beware the Rage of a Desperate Man. And it's a 4-part series, although it really should have been 3, but it's a 4-part series, and I just want to talk about it for a little bit. And that the Craven segues into this because it has a lot to do with Craven's son, the Grim Hunter. So I mean, obviously, you have part 1. It's a story between Demo Goblin and Hobgoblin and that little bonkers nightmare that they have going on. And so in part 1, it's basically this guy, Spider-Man in this series of comics is really struggling because it's coming on the heels of Maximum Carnage, Life Theft, and Pursuit, which are all 3 fantastic storylines in Spider-Man comics. But I feel like the one where there's a lot of impact is even this one, because Spider-Man is really struggling with the fact that he is really close to just often villains. I went back and reread these recently, and I really felt like, I don't know the writer. This was written by Hannah, and I think that was it. Now I gotta open it to figure it out, but I looked at it, and I know the last name's Hannah. But Howard Mackey and Tom Lyle. The story and art are by Scott Hanna. Tom Lyle, I think, is the art. Howard Mackey is the story. The inks are done by Scott Hanna. First off, I love the the art in these comics. I mean, it's a very cool looking it's anime. I call it animated realism because it's animated. It obviously is, but it looks good. It looks very concrete. It's not abstract. I'm very big into that. So he comes. So Jason Philip Macendale, the Hobgoblin, comes across this guy, and he's been squatting at Craven's estate. And I'm not going to show all these. I'm just going to show the first couple pages. He's squatting at the Craven estate. Yeah, it is great art. I agree, Ginger. And what happens is of course, Hobgoblin and Demogoblin were once one entity because Hobgoblin was, and I don't remember exactly how this went, but Hobgoblin was merged with a demon something, I don't remember his name, and then they separated. So then you had Demogoblin and Hobgoblin. Demogoblin, of course, had all the power. He was this demon, obviously, with Goblin. And I lost my train of thought. Sorry. This has been a great stream. You're probably looking at this going, what the hell is this dude's problem? I'm sorry. Okay. So, Demogoblin and Hobgoblin. So, Demogoblin's been tracking down Jason Philip Macendale. Hobgoblin wants to go and see if he can get the power that Craven the Hunter had when he got his super strength and everything from the serum. So eventually it boils down to, it's a great triple threat match between Hobgoblin, and technically it's not even Hobgoblin, it's Spidey, Jason Philip Macendale, he's not even in his Hobgoblin outfit, and Demogoblin. Demogoblin is trying to kill Hobgoblin because he's on a righteous, yada yada, so on and so forth. And so eventually what happens is Spidey beats Demogoblin, messes him up pretty good, carts him off to jail. Jason Philip Macendale gets away, and he heads to Russia. And so what happened, as I said, and Spidey through all four of these books, like all four of these parts, is just struggling with the letting villains live, and he's really getting close to that, getting that one bad day, and then that they always say about that Punisher says about Daredevil. Spidey was on that one bad day where he was about ready to tip that scale, and and he's really struggling with this because Demogoblin is just killing people. I mean, Demogoblin, he gets captured again. So Jason Philip Macendale is in Russia. He's confronting Craven's son, Vladimir Kravinoff. He has Craven's journal. Obviously, his son wants it. So he makes a deal. He says, look, give me the power that your father had, and I will give you the other half of the book. He hid the one half out in the snow. He gave the first half to the son to prove that he had it. So, and then what's also is going on during this one is Demogoblin breaks out of jail, because that's what they do. And he's just killing inmates and purging sinners and everything like that. So Spidey again has to deal with Demogoblin, and I mean it's like the hits keep on coming with these issues, and you can kind of see Spidey's descent into like that one bad day. And so you really just want him to, you honestly almost get to the point where, like, dude, Spidey, like, just do it, man. Just pull that trigger. You're almost rooting for him because Demogoblin is not even a human, and he's killing people and yada yada. So you're almost like, just do it. Just do it. But no, Spidey has his no kill policy, and he sticks to it. But you see him tote that line very, very close. So again, and this is really weird because in this issue there's a guy who was posing as Richard Fisk. He had like an eye patch or something like that. He's posing as Fisk's son. And so Spider-Man's about to attack Demogoblin, and then out of nowhere, like Spidey or this Richard Fisk guy knocks him out of the air. Long story short, Demogoblin gets a hold of him and just makes Spidey, he says, you can decide his fate. And Spidey's like, look, as much as I want you to kill that guy, and as much as I want all these guys to never come back, I can't do it. And it's actually really funny because it's like the human condition. Like we almost feel like we come to terms with what we're saying, and then we relapse right back into it because we're human. We don't, because like he even says, you almost think he has closure on this whole issue. Where he's like, oh no, I can't let him die, I can't let him die. But even through the rest of this book, or the rest of this series of four, he's still struggling with this whole thing. He keeps saying, he's like, look, I'm about to let you and Demo Goblin just take each other out. When he was talking to Hobgoblin. So anyway, so Hobgoblin gets on the table. They start to give him the serum, and of course, obviously, he's in pain, and he's doing the whole Captain America First Avenger thing, or where they're like, oh, I think I'm dying, and so you can tell it's probably going to work. He's not going to die, but he thinks he's dying, so he brings his glider in. Through all these shenanigans, he does get the super strength. And he does go back to New York. Then we have, again, Spider-Man and Demo Goblin kind of searching the city. Spider-Man's like, why? He's talking to Criminals. Why are you on the streets? Demo Goblin's out here. He's killing people. Like, just stay off the streets. He leaves. Demo Goblin comes and kills them anyway. Like, it looked like seconds later. They didn't even get one sentence out before Demo Goblin came over the thing and killed him. So then, of course, Demo Goblin catches up with Hobgoblin, Jason Philip McIndale, and so then they have this fight in this church. And again, Spidey's like, these guys, like, I just can't do it. It's like two like dogs that are fighting. Like, they just keep going at it, and he's frustrated. He's sad. I mean, there's a mom and a child in the church, and like they're stuck in the middle of this. And Spidey's like, look, like Spidey's all messed up because he went to go take on Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin beat the crap out of him because Spidey didn't expect him to be so strong. Well, duh. So what ends up happening at the end here is that a pillar goes to shake, and Demo Goblin, in kind of a typical redemption story-ish thing. He knows that the child is pure, and so what he does is he makes one big mad gab to grab that pillar so that it doesn't fall and release the child, and he tells it, he says, run, stay pure, save this world. So then Spidey, Macindale's coming in and he's punching him, and he's like, the kid dies, whatever, casualties happen or whatever. Spidey comes in, knocks Macindale off of Demo Goblin, grabs the daughter and the mom, and gets them out of there. And Demo Goblin, basically, he gets crushed by this pillar. And just I'm gonna get it out because the artistry here is just so good. Like they convey so much of what this series is about. So I mean, I'll start here. I mean, so what you have here is you have, this is when they're fighting and Hobgoblin and Demo Goblin, and so he's holding the pillar, and then this art is so good. I love this art. And then in the end, I mean, it's Demo Goblin's just like, thank you, my time here is done, and just katoom, just like crushed. And the art is so good, and just this story is really good. I'm sorry, it is. The story is really good, and it's not this. When I first started to think about doing this podcast, it was more like this was the first story that came to mind because I feel like nobody talks about this story enough. Because it's really good. The writing is really good. The art is really good. The characters are really good. I mean, you almost feel for Demo Goblin at this point. I know he's an asshole, and he was deplorable in Maximum Carnage. So he's at the mercy of the writers. But in this story, I felt like they encapsulated perfectly what this character was. And then we go into the fourth part, which is part 4, which kind of takes it off the rails, which is it introduces Coldheart. Jason Philip McIndale, after Demo Goblin's dead, Jason Philip McIndale goes in, and he's going after his son. And he wants his son back, and he's going to take it, and he's trying, he's going to kill the stepdad that the good stepdad who's an accountant, yada yada. Hobgoblin's like, what is he, an accountant? Like, okay. So this story is more about Hobgoblin and his son. But Spidey's about done. Like, he's about spent. He's done chasing these goblins around. So what happens is he goes in and he confronts Hobgoblin, because the Hobgoblin's not even hiding anymore. Hobgoblin thinks he's invincible. He's super strong. He's, he can take whatever he wants. He has the power. So he goes and he does, and he goes and takes his son. Spidey's just basically there talking to Hobgoblin, and he's just like, dude, like, why are you doing this? Like, stop. Just stop. Like, you're being a bit much. Like, he's literally just saying, you're being a bit much. Then Coldheart shows up. And, I mean, she did have a little bit of a scene prior to this where she got her armor and her swords out and stuff. I think it was at the beginning. But this was so odd. And I felt like this took away from this story, because all she did was showed up, stopped Spider-Man from beating or attacking Hobgoblin. Spider-Man then went away, and then she had really not much more to do this issue. Then, of course, we have the final showdown between Hobgoblin and Spidey, which finally Spidey takes Hobgoblin down and beats the crap out of Hobgoblin. Let me make sure I have this right here, because it's all kind of blending together, and I at least want to be accurate. I did read these again recently, but it all kind of blends together sometimes. But yeah, so Spidey kind of unleashes hell on Hobgoblin, breaks his jaw, knocks him out, and in the end, he saves the son, and then Coldheart again randomly comes in and she freezes him in place or something with her sword that's cold. And then, of course, Jason Philip McIndale's son, Jay. Jay was just... Hi, Block. Block in the comments saying the long-awaited debut, I guess. But his son basically said, don't hurt him, blah, blah, blah. And apparently Spidey did something to Coldheart. She didn't save a family member of hers, or her son, or her brother, or something. I don't know, she's got some beef with both Hobgoblin and Spidey. It just was very left field, very random, didn't feel in place at all. I felt like it took away a lot from this last issue. Honestly, I felt like this story should have ended after the third part. The fourth part, it was a good epilogue for Jason Philip McIndale's Hobgoblin, but at the same time, Coldheart being thrown in there at the last minute sucked. It also was, there was also, at the end of this issue, it showed Craven's son getting the serum finally, because they were trying to perfect it. Well, with Jason Philip McIndale, they were able to perfect it. And Jason Philip McIndale, then Craven's son, Vladimir, got the serum at the end, and it was a success. So now, in the issue number 50, the next issue, we have the Grim Hunter coming up, which is issue number 50 of Spider-Man. Also in this, a lot that was going on was Aunt May was sick and in the hospital. They don't really show it in these comics, but Aunt May, I think, had a stroke or something, and so there's this dark-haired, shadowy figure who keeps calling and checking in on Aunt May, or calling and talking to Mary, or wanting to talk to Mary Jane. And so we all know that this is leading up to the Clone Saga, which is coming very soon after this. However, we didn't know that at the time, obviously. So it's they're kind of brewing a lot of storylines in this story here. I mean, a lot of people probably would say that this is a very transitional storyline. I beg to differ. I really do, because I feel like there is a lot of aftermath from Maximum Carnage, Life Theft, Pursuit, a lot of that's going on here, and I feel like this is honestly like the I don't know, like the end of that great run right there was this, and I felt it was very well written. I felt like the struggles that Spidey was going through was very, very well encapsulated in all this with the writing. The artwork was great. So anyway, I know I've droned on about this for probably way too long, but yeah. So if you have like a digital Marvel, I don't know what it is. I only collect physical. I only collect physical comic books because I'm an old fogey. But if you do have, look up Spider-Man issues, what is it? 46 through 49. It's a 4-part series. As I said, the second part is, the second part, or the fourth part is kind of rough. It does kind of clamp it off at the end. And hi, Invincible 2004. Hi. I see your wave. But yeah, so it's a good run. As I said, also, I mean, any of the other storylines are also great that you could. Maximum Carnage is one of my favorites. I didn't want to start with that one because that's like everyone's go-to. I didn't want to start with something that's common. I want to start with something that was a bit more not comics. The Jackal Clone Spidey saga threw me for a loop. That's the only time I was reading them. I honestly didn't hate the Clone Saga. I liked a lot of the Clone Saga. And this Spider-Man podcast, I mean, I'll talk about anything Spider-Man. Anything. Like, I kind of said that I would go for an hour, and I'm at 40 minutes. So, I mean, if you want to talk about anything else, or Ginger, if you want to talk about anything else, or Invincible 2004, if you want to talk about anything else, I'm good. I kind of went through my itinerary of what I wanted to go through, just like the comics and then the movies and Craven and stuff like that. But the Clone Saga, I didn't think was absolutely terrible. Now, there were bad moments in the Clone Saga, but the overall story where you had, like, Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly, the baby, Mary Jane being pregnant, there was a lot of good stuff in there, truth be told. I really enjoyed a lot of it. Kane was another one, and no, I'm not talking about Glenn Jacobs. I'm talking about Kane from the Spider-Man comic books, who I swear to God had to been partially Kane from WWE had to be a partial influence, or was partially influenced by Kane from the comic books, because Kane from the comic books came first, and then not long after, Kane in the WWE came, and I swear to God they got to be an influence. But yeah, the Clone Saga I did not think it was too terrible. And actually, there is some pretty good storylines in there. And there are some pretty terrible ones. I mean, it just depends on which epic crossover event, because that's all the Clone Saga was just a bunch of crossovers that kind of bled together. I'm trying to think of which one was my favorite. What was the one Spider-Side? Spider-Side was fun. He's like the bane of spider people. But yeah. Jackal was okay. Jackal was always kind of a me. Will you be watching the boxing? No, I will not be watching the boxing. I don't care for boxing. I assume you're talking about Floyd Money Mayweather and the other guy. Whoever that guy is. I don't even know what his name is. I can't even remember. So no, I will not be watching the boxing. So yeah, but any of the comic book things that I mentioned here, Pursuit, Life Theft, Maximum Carnage, read any of those. They're all great books. They're all great stories. But this one did pretty good. This one was one of those sleeper hits in my mind. The Beware the Rage of a Desperate Man. I liked Emo Goblin, honestly. As I said, it kind of captivated me. Like, he was just kind of a demonic douchebag in the Maximum Carnage, but then he goes into this and actually having substance. So, and I mean, Spidey's just off the chart in this one with the writing. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else really I want to talk about. I mean, unless you guys in chat want to talk about anything Spidey related. So, I don't know. I mean, give you guys a couple seconds to chime in if you want to talk about anything. If not, I might wrap it up. But with these podcasts, as I said earlier, I may do these. I don't know. I'll do them whenever. I mean, I'm not going to put a time frame on it because, if there's nothing to talk about. I thought about doing this last week, when they announced Craven and stuff like that. And, I just was like, man, I've known Spidey for so many years. And I feel like I have a lot I like to talk about with Spider-Man that I don't get to a lot because on our channel it's more MCU Spider-Man mostly. We don't talk about comics that much in regards to Spider-Man. We don't talk about animated stuff. I mean, I don't Ginger or Block, you weren't. I don't know if you were here earlier, but I mean, I was saying that the '90s Spider-Man cartoon is not my favorite Spider-Man cartoon. It was the media that got me introduced to Spider-Man and comic books, but it was not. In hindsight, as I grew up and other Spider-Man content came out, the animated series was not my favorite Spider-Man animated series. I mean, if you know me, you know what my favorite one is, and it was a very sad 2-season run that I feel like was very not warranted for cancellation. But I think it was more of a Sony. I think it was more of a Sony Disney deal that happened, or you know, Madam Web in the animated series. I mean, I can talk about Madam Web if you want me to. She's creepy as all hell. I feel like she was ambiguous for no reason and didn't really help anything. Like, even in the end, like, she's like, I'm gonna have you guys go fight other Spider-Men in another universe. Like, I love how they made in the animated series, the 90s animated series, I love how they made, what's her origin and deal if you have time to discuss. I don't know what her true origin is. I mean, it goes into the whole web of Destiny. And she's like the caretaker of the Web of Destiny, and you can see everything through the Web of Destiny. And Madam Web is actually more like a Madam Web is more of like a caretaker for that, and it's something that can kind of be passed down per se. So because there's a different Madam Web, and I think it's Jessica. No, it's not Jessica Drew, is it? In the comics currently, there is a new Madam Web. She's younger, obviously, and it's either Jessica Drew or who's the other one? I don't remember. But yeah, but I love it like in the animated series how the whole Secret Wars thing revolved around Spider-Man, which it really didn't in the comics. But then like the Secret Wars was not the big thing. Like Secret Wars was not the biggest thing. It was this cross-dimensional spider carnage thing. Like, I'm like, what happened here? And don't even get me started on Carnage. I feel like Carnage should never be in an animated show unless it's adult oriented. I know everybody loves Carnage, but like the Carnage in the '90s animated series was a joke. I mean, he like stabbed people with his tentacle and like drained their life force. It's like, no, in the comic books, like Carnage like slashed people up, made sharp objects, killed them, boom, dead. So I really don't I don't know why they would do that to themselves, because it just wasn't good at all. I really had a hard time following, like towards the end of the Spider-Man, and I mean with all the stock footage that they kept on using, and all that. I mean there was so much stock footage. It just even for my young dumb brain, it became just irritating. I mean, yeah, I don't know. The '90s Spider-Man show was I don't want to say a waste because it was good, but it was just not as good as everyone remembers it. It's like Ninja Turtles, the '90s or the '80s Turtles. Like, if you go back and watch it, it's not that good, guys. Like, we loved it as kids because we were young and dumb, but it's not that good. I'm sorry. Okay, well, I think I've overstayed my welcome. So yeah, this is a nice little podcast. As I said, I don't know when I'm going to do this again. I mean, if people, if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact and I didn't scare you off by now, I mean, definitely leave a comment. Say, hey, if you do this again, do you know of a Zam of Nerd Nation? Yes, I know of a Zam of Nerd Nation. Yes, I do. He is my partner in crime on this channel, NerdTube. We work together on this channel to make tons and tons of content. Do you know of a Zam of Nerd Nation? but he's a great guy. Yes, he is. He's a great guy. Okay, so wrapping things up. But yeah, if anyone's watching this on YouTube after the fact, I mean, just leave a comment. Say, hey, next time you do one of these, talk about this storyline, and I'll talk about it. I mean, I've read a lot, or at least I know of a lot of Spider-Man content. As I said, I've been with the Web Slinger for years. The show is called Quips and Thwips, so I almost didn't make it out of that one. But yeah. And I mean, I can have people on here. It doesn't just have to be me. I mean, I can have other people on if they want to talk Spidey. I would even love to debate people on here about Spidey. Anyway, thank you, Invincible 2004, Ginger Greek, and The Block for joining me in the chat, and Ginger for joining me for a brief moment in here in the actual podcast, as I have to figure out my technical difficulties. I'll probably just edit them out later on when I can on YouTube. But anyway, with all that being said, thank you everybody for watching. Let me know what you think. Give it a like and give us a subscribe on NerdTube. I appreciate all of you guys for watching. Have a good weekend and a good Monday. Bye-bye.